Tonight, Ukraine and Europe scramble to renegotiate a plan for peace as Russia watches and waits and continues to bombard Ukraine. Donald Trump suggests something good may be happening. But the Ukrainian president insists his borders can't be changed by force and accuses Putin of trying to legitimise what he has stolen. So will anything come of this manic diplomacy, and is it a win-win for Russia either way? We'll discuss that tonight and find out why a US judge has thrown out the criminal case against the former head of the FBI. Plus, harder they come, the harder they fall. We examine the legacy of one of the pioneers of reggae, Jimmy Cliff. I'll hear from one of the artists he inspired, a massive star himself, Shaggy. That's all coming up on The World with me, Dominic Waggle. Good evening and welcome to the programme. I want to start with a major diplomatic headache for Europe and a big question. What on earth is going on with Trump's peace plan for Ukraine? It was cooked up in secret between only Russians and Americans. In fact, parts of it looked like they could have been dictated by the Kremlin. First, the White House framed it as a take it or leave it offer designed to end attacks like this one in Kharkiv overnight. A deadline was set for this Thursday, but now President Trump is suggesting everything is up for negotiation.
It is probably the most productive day we have had on this issue. I don't want to declare victory or finality here. There's still some work to be done.
Confused? You might well be. Tonight, after a weekend of frantic diplomacy and late-night dinners in Geneva, we'll try and work out what exactly is happening. Could this deal really bring peace, or could it actually lay the groundwork for an even bigger European conflict? Lots to discuss tonight. Let's get started with our first report from our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes.
In Ukraine, no end to Russia's war, despite international efforts to talk peace. Russian drones devastated this residential area in the second city of Kharkiv.
As a result of the strike on private households, houses were ruined and destroyed. 2 people were killed, 1 woman and 1 man.
The attack came as talks in Geneva between American, European and Ukrainian officials ended with what was described as a refined peace framework.
There's a lot more work still to do, but the key thing is that Russia now needs to come to the table and to stop the bombardment of Ukraine. As we saw again last night, we need that just and lasting peace for the people of Ukraine.
Donald Trump, posting on social media, said, "Is it really possible that big progress is being made in peace talks between Russia and Ukraine? Don't believe it until you see it, but something good just may be happening." Yet Ukraine's president needs to ensure an initial 28-point proposal put forward by Washington that favoured Russian demands to keep Ukrainian land is diluted. Taking care not to upset the US side, he shared his concerns with Sweden's parliament.
Putin wants legal recognition for what he has stolen, to break the principle of territorial integrity and sovereignty. He wants it not only from Ukraine, he wants it from the whole world, and it's very dangerous.
In Moscow, an advisor to the Russian president said much of the initial 28-point plan is acceptable, but proposals put forward by the European side are not. The reaction on the street, similarly gloomy.
I
don't think it will happen. This plan won't work. The Europeans won't allow it.
Ukraine will try to make changes, but the question is, will anyone listen? I think not, because the positions are very unequal.
Yet, under daily Russian bombardment, Ukraine needs its voice to be heard, or else suffer this carnage in silence. Deborah Haynes, Sky News.
Well, the first plan was called a Russian wish list, but now we have Ukraine and Europe's riposte as you'd expect, they don't match up. Our defence analyst, Michael Clark, has been taking a look in detail.
The 28-point US peace plan, which seems to have been based on some powerful Russian drafting, is not the only diplomatic game in town, but it does serve as the unavoidable point of departure because President Trump has put his personal stamp on it. It's based on the realisation that for a ceasefire to become a reality, Ukraine will have to accept that it's lost control of 20% of its territory that the Russians have so far conquered. Though Kyiv will not give up on its legal claim to all of its territory, whether the Russians occupy and colonise it or not. But what Kyiv says it won't accept is giving up the 4 fortress cities that have held out against the Russians and their separatist militias for 11 years now, since 2014. And those cities are strategically vital to defend territory to the west, right up to the mighty Dnieper River. And Ukraine has sacrificed so much blood to defend this line. It would be a bitter pill indeed to abandon these cities to a proposed Russian-controlled demilitarised zone. So the European version of the 28 points suggests a ceasefire in place with no demilitarised zone, the line of control defined by where the forces are at the moment. Now, this is a fundamental difference between the US and the European versions. Another difference is in the number of people Ukraine will be allowed to have in its armed forces in the future. The US version said that the Ukrainian forces would be a maximum of 600,000 troops. The European version suggests 800,000, which is quite close to the 850,000 who are currently mobilised in Ukraine and in peacetime, implying there could be more if a ceasefire broke down. Of course, any such restriction undermines the principle of Ukrainian sovereignty. But in sheer numerical terms, well, they could probably live with it if other aspects of the deal were satisfactory. The complete US plan was 457 words long. Only 6 of them were devoted to the most important issue of all, what security guarantees Ukraine could expect. And these are the 6 words. The European draft went with a one-word change to robust on that one. But then the Europeans go for the killer point. Since the deal would mean no NATO troops or help or support anywhere inside Ukraine as a deterrent to further Russian aggression, the only logical robust guarantee would be a US guarantee that mirrors NATO's famous Article 5. And that would imply that the US would go to war against Russia in Ukraine if Russia stepped over the line. Do we think Trump would ever offer that? Or even be allowed to offer it by his MAGA supporters? And if he did, would any sensible leader in Europe believe it? The Europeans know that they have to keep talking to keep the show on the road in helping Ukraine. But in truth, they don't really believe in it. They just can't afford to let the US blame them if it all goes nowhere.
Well, our US correspondent Mark Stone is joining us from Washington. Mark, you've got the difference there, as Professor Clark has laid out, between the US-Russian position, the Ukrainian-European position. There seems to be differences, though, between the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and possibly the Vice President, J.D. Vance. It all seems totally chaotic. Is it any clearer from where you're sitting?
Well, no, Dom. I think the first thing to say is that whatever I say in the next minute could turn out to be completely wrong or totally upturned in the days ahead. I mean, it really is very, very hard to read. I guess it began about midweek last week, and from that point, right when the 28-point plan was first leaked, right the way up to now, it's kind of been bewildering to try and work out what is going on. It's not just us who are bewildered. It is quite clear to me from European, British sources that I've spoken to over the past few days that they too have been kind of bewildered. But I think we're now in a position that we thought we might be in at the beginning of this process, because although the US administration, certainly the White House, was framing this 28-point plan, and the briefing we were being given was that this was it. This wasn't just a kind of rough idea of a plan. This was the plan that was now being presented by Dan Driscoll, the Army Secretary, who, by the way, has emerged as a very key part of all of this. This was a plan that was being presented to the Ukrainians as a fait accompli. But the sense we got was it really wasn't. And that's turned out over the course of the weekend through Geneva to be quite right. It is not a done deal, and the Europeans have now been able to massage it, to change it, as Michael Clark just outlined. But of course, the key thing, and I kept thinking this through the weekend, reading all the lines that were coming out, and the one word that was missing from all of it was Russia. I mean, what does Russia make of this? Well, we got a sense of that today. because the Dmitry Peskov, the spokesman for Putin, basically said everything that Europe has now added into this or changed in this makes it irrelevant to us. So the key question, Dom, is where does Donald Trump settle on this? Does he settle with the man he's shaking hands with there, with Putin, and get fed up with the European and Ukrainian position, or do the Europeans once again manage to pull him back in? That's the key question. Incredibly hard to know where we stand. I think the one thing I would say is that with Thanksgiving coming up on Thursday, you know as well as I do, a massive, massive day in America. They don't want anything to get in the way of that. I think we may well be in the long grass now until next week, unless Zelensky feels it is so important to get himself either to Washington tomorrow, unlikely given the timing, or to Mar-a-Lago over the next couple of days to hammer out some sort of a deal. That may be the case. But have a listen to Caroline Levitt. She was speaking in the last few moments on all of this.
I would point any critics to the words of the Ukrainians yesterday, in which they said that they feel very positive about this plan. They've been very involved. They have had direct input on the language of this plan, and that we are in direct communication and correspondence with them. Any idea, let me just finish with this, the idea that the United States of America is not engaging with both sides equally in this war to bring it to an end is a complete and total fallacy.
So my sense, as I say, Dom, is that now, after this frantic time over the past half a week or so, things will calm a little now. Both sides will try and work out where they are. The Russians, the Americans behind the scenes may put some pressure on them. Maybe we will see Zelensky coming to the United States, but I don't think it will be before Thanksgiving.
So while all that's going on, Mark, you've also got the possibility of military action against Venezuela, massive military build-up in the waters off Venezuela. And now the news that President Trump will visit China next year. It's hard to keep up.
Very much so. Venezuela, yeah, I mean, we just don't know. We know that there is the biggest naval, not just naval, military build-up, American military build-up in the Caribbean. It's absolutely huge. We're talking aircraft carriers, all the rest of it. Is this just bluff, or is it combined with the fact that the United States has now designated one of the Venezuelan cartels as a terrorist organization? Is this the beginning of some sort of a ground attack, an air attack? Honestly, who knows? The most interesting thing to emerge from this city today, I think, is the phone conversation between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump, which took place this afternoon. We are told it's an hour long. It's the first time they've spoken since they met and kind of agreed a trade truce in South Korea a month or so ago. And Donald Trump released not a very long statement on Truth Social, basically saying, we've spoken, I've agreed to go to China in February. He's agreed to come to America later on in the year. Our relationship with China remains extremely strong, etc. The most interesting thing, Dom, was actually in the readout from the Chinese government of how that call went, where it appears, as you and I were discussing offline earlier on, that the Chinese have kind of decided, or Xi Jinping has decided to school Donald Trump in all things Taiwan, because it says here, President Xi outlined China's principled position on the Taiwan question. He underscored that Taiwan's return to China is an integral part of the post-war international order. China and the US fought shoulder to shoulder against fascism and militarism during World War II. Given what's going on, it's even more important for us to jointly safeguard the victory of World War II. That, to me, Dom, sounds very much like the Chinese just reminding this American administration that let's be honest, Donald Trump might not have been paying a huge amount of attention on Taiwan, that they do seek to take Taiwan back by force or otherwise sometime soon. And I guess the big question, given that Trump appears in Ukraine to be happy at the moment, it seems, to allow Russia to take the eastern part of Ukraine, what would he do if China invaded Taiwan? My sense is not a great deal.
Mark Stone, thank you very much. A huge amount going on in Washington, but let's go back to that Ukrainian diplomacy, which is baffling everybody. So hopefully to shed a bit more light on that, we're joined now by Boris Bondarev, a former Russian diplomat who resigned from his position in opposition to Moscow's war against Ukraine. Mr. Bondarev, thank you very much for joining us. What do you make of what Ukraine and Europe have said in response to the American-Russian plan. And what's going to be the Kremlin's response to that, do you think?
Well, it doesn't look very much serious to me. It's a desperate attempt not to be sidelined by Americans, which I think European Union is very much afraid of, to be being sidelined, to being kicked out of this process. It's understandable, but I think it's natural, because the European Union has always had a very, very limited role in all these things. So I think Moscow is quite satisfied watching this from distance, waiting for something to be presented to it, so Moscow would make the final choice, what to agree on, what not. So it puts Putin again and again in a position of strength. And what is more curious and interesting, that he doesn't do anything for that. It's totally the doing from...
Sorry to interrupt, just to get your take on what's been it's been characterised as actually basically Russian wishing a wish list, kind of imposed and dictated through the Americans. Is that your sense of what the original claims and peace plan was? And do you think there's a possibility the Europeans can turn that round with the Ukrainians into something that both sides can try and find common ground over?
Well, the question is really not what Europeans would like to propose instead of American proposal and all. The question should be what leverage Europeans do have, so they can use to insist on their demands and to make Putin listen. For now, I don't see any leverage that European Union, well, and Europe, including United Kingdom, could use against Putin's demand, Putin's so-called maximalist goals, which he doesn't surrender. He keeps advancing on the battlefield, so to speak. So it's all blah, blah, blah for now.
So you think, and obviously you resigned from the Foreign Service in opposition to the invasion, but is it your sense that within the body you left, the Russian Foreign Service, and in the Kremlin, there'll be sort of quiet satisfaction at the moment as to the direction of travel?
Well, actually, there should be some satisfaction, because they see that the Western camp is divided, is very seriously divided, as it's never been before, seriously. So, and what is the best thing for them, for Moscow, is that they don't have to do anything. They just sit and wait for the courts.
What do you think that says about the way the West and the way Europe and America have conducted themselves over the last 3.5 years?
Very unprofessional. And it makes Russian diplomacy look very professional.
Which it is. I mean, it's a foreign service with a long-standing record of pretty effective diplomacy. It's effectively running rings, you would say, around the West at the moment. Is there a way out of that, though? How does the West kind of turn the tables, or how does Europe turn the tables, even with the limited leverage they have, to try and regain some kind of initiative in this process?
The problem with leverage is not that you think you don't have enough leverage. It's a problem with the mindset, first of all. When people keep talking about unwinnable war, that Russia is a nuclear power, it cannot be defeated and blah, 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 it's rubbish. Because it means that the next time Russia invades United Kingdom or Poland or whatever, you must surrender at once, because you cannot fight Russia. It's a totally false mindset. That's it. First of all, Europe must stop this self-defeatist thinking and must start thinking how this war should be won. Not stopped, not just pushed aside, not frozen for indefinite time. Won. The wars are either won or lost. So it's up to you what you prefer.
Boris Bodarev, thank you very much for your time and your insights into what is a, as I say, confusing situation diplomatically, but great to get your insights. Well, while efforts to end the war in Ukraine continue, the fault lines caused by the conflict extend even to the world of sport. A ban on Russia and its ally Belarus competing in the Paralympics has been lifted, sparking widespread criticism. Our sports correspondent Rob Harris has this report.
As Ukraine faces pressure to accept a peace deal, Russia is already starting to be brought in from the cold by sport. The Paralympics lifting bans on Russia and war ally Belarus despite the conflict continuing, because it's now being claimed the invasion itself was never the reason for the ban. As for the first time since the countries were reinstated, the president of the International Paralympic Committee explains the decision to Sky News.
Russia and Belarus, they use Paralympic sport to promote their participation in the war, in the conflict. And this is what led to the first suspension, the suspension in 23. Between 23 and now, in the discussion went around, obviously there is less evidence of that being used again for the promotion of the war. So this was important to clarify to our own membership, but also it has to do with the statement that was put out.
That's the statement criticising the Paralympic decision from a coalition of governments. They said, "We view this development with serious concern, given that the Russian aggression against Ukraine continues and the Russian and Belarusian breaches of the Olympic Charter remain." But this is what the IPC is now disputing, claiming their decision has been misunderstood by ministers. And as a global movement, it's facing questions within about inconsistencies banning some countries and not others at war.
The reason why we take action and propose the membership to suspend nations or not is not linked to participation in wars. The majority of the membership, they were expressing these views. Why only Russia and Belarus? And why not punish others if the case is only the war? Which, again, it's not. It's breach of the constitution.
But for the International Olympic Committee, bans on Russia and Belarus remain. Just this week, the United Nations adopted the Olympic truce for next year's Winter Games in Italy, a platform used by Ukraine to speak out.
The international community must maintain the suspension of Russian and Belarusian athletes from international sports competitions. Allowing their participation would undermine the integrity of sport as a contributor to peace, condone the ongoing killing of Ukrainian athletes and their coaches, and show disrespect to the hundreds of members of Ukraine's sports community who have been killed, injured, or displaced by this war.
Russia won't have a team at the Milan Cortina Winter Paralympics, largely because individual sports maintain their own bans. But it seems increasingly likely the Los Angeles 2028 Games will mark the end of Russia's exile after more than a decade of punishments for doping and war by the Olympics and Paralympics. Rob Harris, Sky News.
You're watching The World. Still to come. A blow to Donald Trump as a judge rules one of his key appointments was unlawful. We'll be live in Washington next.
She's preparing the ground to raise taxes.
The budget, I've got to do the things that I think are right.
There are tax rises coming down the track. No.
You can't rule out further tax rises.
It's exactly what she's going to have to do.
She'll be talking about that when it comes to the budget.
We'll be talking everything money as the Chancellor reveals what's in her budget.
Goodness knows how it's going to play out if these tax rises are announced.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back. Well, it sounds like something out of a banana republic. The president wants public figures he doesn't like prosecuted, but the prosecutor won't play ball, so he has him removed and puts in his former personal lawyer instead, even though she's woefully underqualified. Lindsay Halligan is an insurance lawyer, not a criminal prosecutor. But today, Donald Trump's attempt to have former head of the FBI, James Comey, and New York Attorney General Letitia James prosecuted collapsed in embarrassment after a judge dismissed both cases because the judge said Lindsay Halligan's appointment was unlawful. Here's how James Comey responded.
This case mattered to me personally, obviously, but it matters most because a message has to be sent that the President of the United States cannot use the Department of Justice to target his political enemies. I don't care what your politics are, you have to see that as fundamentally un-American and a threat to the rule of law that keeps all of us free. I know that Donald Trump will probably come after me again, and my attitude's going to be the same. I'm innocent, I am not afraid, and I believe in an independent federal judiciary, the gift from our founders that protects us from a would-be tyrant.
Joining us with the latest, our US correspondent James Matthews. James, Donald Trump's weaponising of federal law enforcement has been amongst his most egregious excesses. But before we get onto what this means for that, remind us who James Comey and Letitia James are and what Donald Trump why he had it in for them.
Yeah, good evening, Dom. They both have history with Trump. I mean, they loom large on his loathe list. James Comey is the former FBI director. He oversaw the investigation, you'll remember, into Russian interference in the 2016 election, which Trump won. He's been charged with making false statements and obstructing a congressional investigation. Letitia James, she's the New York Attorney General. You might remember she led the successful prosecution of the Trump Organization for business fraud. So they are targets for Donald Trump, as part of his retribution plans. It's a situation, Dom, a farcical one, where Trump, as you say, couldn't find a prosecutor, a career prosecutor, who'd take the case against James, the guy whose job it would have been gave it a body swerve, saying there isn't grounds for a prosecution here. He was followed by other prominent prosecutors who delivered the same verdict. So that's when he turned to Lindsay Halligan, by all accounts, a very good insurance lawyer, but that's all she is. Her work experience didn't suit the job brief. She'd never presented to a grand jury before. But there was something beyond that, something rather more important. She had been unlawfully appointed. That's why a judge now has taken the step she has, throwing out these cases, calling this a defective appointment of a prosecutor that constitutes unlawful exercises of executive power.
I mean, James, Donald Trump has made it pretty clear he actually wants the Justice Department to go after his enemies. He's actually sort of publicly said that to his Attorney General. Is this going to sort of stop that? Is this going to rein him in, do you think? Is it a sufficient sort of shot across the bows, if you like, from the judiciary that he's overreached here?
It's a shot across the bows. I don't think it will stop him, Dom. I mean, he long promised, retribution against political enemies, as you say. But in this case, I think, to coin a phrase commonly used around the White House, he's effed around and he's found out that that doesn't fly so easily through the courts. The Department of Justice, it's appealing the move, by the way. So James and Comey, they haven't reached road's end quite yet. It is a significant boost for both, though, and it can only be a significant blow for Donald Trump. He's the president in pursuit of sworn enemies, which his critics characterise as a weaponisation of the justice system. Those same critics, I think, will point to the haste, the impropriety on display here as evidence of that weaponisation. I think they will also take heart from a system that appears to be offering robust resistance. But Donald Trump, he does appear undeterred. Indeed, in the past hour, Don, we've had a statement from White House spokesperson Abigail Jackson. She says the facts of the indictments against Comey and James have not changed, and this will not be the final word on this matter. So, in this regard, or in this instance, this revenge tour has come off the rails. The White House clearly aiming to get it back on, bearing in mind the list of enemies Donald Trump is targeting doesn't end with James and Comey. It's a longer list with many more names on it.
James Matthews, thank you very much for the update from Washington, where there is a huge amount going on this evening. This is The World. Next up. Well, across to Nigeria, where hundreds of children have been kidnapped in one of the worst mass abductions the country has ever seen.
are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
To Nigeria now, where more than 300 children have been kidnapped in one of the worst mass abductions the country has ever seen. Police say armed men stormed the school in the northwest of the country early on Friday morning, taking more than 300 students and 12 teachers. At least 50 of those children escaped over the weekend, have now been reunited with their families. They were taken from St Mary's School in the village of Papiri in Niger State, just days after another mass kidnapping in neighbouring Kebbi State, where more than 20 schoolgirls were taken from a boarding school. It's been more than 10 years since Boko Haram took 276 girls from their school in the town of Chibok. Many of them have since escaped or been freed. Around 100, though, are still missing. Well, we're joined now by Reverend John Joseph Hayab, chairman of the Christian Association of Nigeria in the northern states. Reverend Hayab, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I mean, it's terrible news.
Thank you for having me.
Have you been in touch?
Good evening to our viewers.
Good evening. It's great to have you on the show. Terrible, terrible story. Have you been in touch with any of the parents of either those who are still held by these kidnappers or any of those who've somehow managed to escape?
Yeah, the unfortunate thing is that Papere is actually in a remote area where you have no access to networks so that you can speak to parents. And that's why the crime or the evil that was committed could easily be done without anybody knowing. The fact is that Niger State is the largest state with the landmarks as far as Nigeria is concerned. And so to travel from Mina, the state capital, to Kontagora, it will take you many hours. And to travel from Kontagora to the location of the school is almost like a whole day travels. So everything has been in such a very bad situation. And these are rural people. What just happened is that because of the commitment of the church in promoting education in rural communities, in providing education for the less privileged members, so a school was established by the Catholic mission of the Kontagora Catholic Diocese in that community, with many Reverend sisters who are directly the teachers and in charge. Unfortunately, since yesterday, Friday, when this thing happened, these Reverend sisters were all moved away. So communication even there is completely difficult. The only joy we have is that we are certain that these 50 children have returned to their parents.
So they've managed to escape, but I mean, what are the others going through? I mean, these kidnappings have happened in the past. Any idea what's happened to them? Any word at all as to their whereabouts and their welfare?
Well, when it happened, approximately 315 pupils and staffs were missing, but 50 had returned, and then over 265 are still unaccounted for. But you see, this is the challenge we have. When bandits or terrorists kidnap children like this, these are young children who in school are used to waking up in the morning to brush their teeth. These are young children who are used in waking up to take their baths. These are young children who are used to waking up to take breakfast. You can imagine what has been happening to them since Friday to this morning and to whenever we're going to get them out. So they are living in such condition, no bathing, no certainty of breakfast, no care for their health and other things. And the trauma that is going on with them and the trauma that their parents, who do not know exactly what they are going through now, is the biggest thing. And because the bandits have not called, they have not even nobody have come out to claim that we are the ones who kidnapped these children. So we are all just doing guesswork. But we are talking with the security agencies and they are saying they are pursuing them. What exactly they are doing, it's not in our place to say it out, but we are hopeful that they will soon catch up with them and get our children back.
So no ransom, no word from the kidnappers. I mean, it's hard to imagine what the parents must be going through. How do those 52 escape? That sounds like a miraculous kind of deliverance that these children were able to get away from.
I think what actually happened was that when these bandits came in, they started with the dormitory that is of the junior students, and they have packed many of them. But before they move to the senior students class, the information have already gone out. So the senior students, since they are bigger, ran away. And that's why only 14 of them are with the kidnappers as I'm speaking now. And so what really happened, because they ran into the bush, the first information the church gave was the number of students or people in that premises that they can account for them. So it's not that the bandit actually took the 315 away, but some of them ran into the bush. When they were sure that there is calm, when they were sure that the criminals are no longer there, so they moved in, and knowing that the school had closed, some of them just moved to their parents in the village, and reports start coming that James is back, Stephen is back, Joseph is back, and that's how we got the number 50.
Just very quickly, I mean, it's a huge country. It's vast, as you say. Got a huge amount of resources, though, and a lot of Nigerians live around the world with a lot of money, a lot of diaspora Nigerians here. How does this keep happening in Nigeria? I mean, if the kidnappings 10 years ago caused massive headlines around the world, it's hard to believe it's been allowed to happen again, isn't it?
This is failure of security or failure of the powers that be to handle issues like this. One of the requirements of the law for every leader is to protect lives and properties. These lives include the lives of our children who are in school, the lives of our women who are at home, the lives of the husband who goes to wherever they go, and the properties of citizens. And this school is property of citizens. In the wisdom of missionaries and the wisdom of the church, we believe that education should not be left in the hands of government alone. So many of our churches keep opening schools, especially in rural communities, because we want to give these children opportunity to prepare themselves for future responsibility, opportunity to equip themselves to meet up the time they were born, but sadly, they are not being protected. But I do know that the challenge of protecting some areas like this is massive. Yesterday, the president of Nigeria came out and said one of the challenges is many of the security men are posted to VIPs, and he has asked that they should all be withdrawn and sent to protect Nigerians. We hope that they will match this word with action, because we don't understand why a government will be allowing security agencies in numbers to be protecting VIPs while criminals are having a field day and the security men are not there to go after the criminals. If our security men can do what is right, when these children we were told that these children have been taken away, in less than 48 or 24 hours, they will put these criminals on the run, and they will have no option than to abandon the children or escape. Oh, but what is happening is that they will have a field day, and we are waiting for them to negotiate. And these children's life is in danger.
We'll have to end it
the
there.
families are traumatized.
But Reverend Hakim, thank you very much for your time. Our hearts go out to the poor children and their parents, and we hope for their speedy return. Thank you very much for coming onto The World tonight.
Thank you too for having me.
Thank you. This is The World. Next up, Shaggy joins us to reflect on the life of one of reggae's all-time greats, Jimmy Cliff, who's died aged 81.
I'm Cordelia Lynch, Sky's Asia correspondent, based here in Bangkok.
These slums, once gripped by fear and death.
There is far less bloodshed now, but it hasn't gone away.
Who's asking you to kill?
The police will give me the orders, and after I kill the target, I throw the gun away.
We try our best to uncover and unpick a fast-changing and deeply complex region.
These large waterways provided an excellent source of body disposal.
This is the Buriganga River, where victims who'd allegedly been shot dead were dumped. Sheikh Hasina, how confident are you that she will stand trial?
She will stand trial, there's no doubt about that.
We're going to take you to the very heart of a criminal network, going undercover inside Southeast Asia's scam centres for the very first time.
We won't have any problems with police, it's okay. Just seen Imran Khan leave, and as we understand it, he's just been shot in the leg.
They have decided that the only way they'll allow elections is if I'm inside jail or killed.
Sky News get the full story first.
Chinese vessels start encircling the boat we're on, blocking its path.
The Chinese are now deploying water cannons firing it directly towards our boat. We've discovered doctors across Delhi dishing out pills like this, claiming they will provide a lifelong cure for homosexuality.
Rohingya people fleeing an escalating civil war.
The situation here in Cox's is desperate. An already insecure place does feel a lot more precarious.
You can't rule out further tax rises.
It's exactly what she's going to have to do.
She'll be talking about that when it comes to the budget.
We'll be talking everything money as the Chancellor reveals what's in her budget.
This knows how it's going to play out if these tax rises are announced.
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent. We gather, analyse and visualise data to tell data-driven stories.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Welcome back. A survivor of a snowstorm in Chile, which left a British woman and 4 other tourists dead, has described the desperate attempts to save his fellow hikers. Among the victims was 40-year-old Victoria Bond from Cornwall. She was hiking with 4 friends when the storm struck, causing whiteout conditions and wind speeds equivalent to a Category 3 hurricane. Sky's Sarah Jane Mee spoke to one of Victoria's friends, Christian Aldridge, who survived the storm.
If it wasn't for our group, we wouldn't have known that anyone was missing. Because, as you say, Victoria wasn't the only person who died on the mountain that day. There were 5 people in total. The volunteer rescue party that went up, who included 2 of our group, Tom and Matt, found 3 bodies. They recovered one of them, and she was still alive at the time, and brought her down on a homemade stretcher that the rest of us in the camp made from sleeping mats, polystyrene, and walking poles. There were fortunately medics in these volunteer groups, but unfortunately she went into hypothermic cardiac arrest. She was shocked twice, and they worked on her for an hour, but she didn't make it through. The other 2 people that they found, one was already deceased on the mountain, and the other one was non-responsive, and it was unsafe to bring her down. The following day, when the Rangers arrived, they recovered the remaining bodies and found the 2 further bodies, one of which was Victoria.
The chair of the BBC has told MPs that he regrets mistakes made over a misleading edit of Donald Trump in a Panorama documentary. Samir Shah was among a number of senior BBC figures giving evidence to the Culture, Media and Sport Committee today about the crisis prompted by the programme and the subsequent resignation of the corporation's Director General and Head of News. Our arts and entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer has the details.
This was a chance to finally hear from some of those whose names have come up a lot as the drama has played out at the BBC, starting with Michael Prescott.
Do you regret writing the memo, Mr. Prescott?
Summoned before the Culture Committee, the former editorial advisor whose leaked memo brought a hailstorm upon the BBC started by insisting he's a strong supporter of theirs.
What troubled me was that during my 3 years on the BBC's Standards Committee, we kept seeing incipient problems which I thought were not being tackled properly. And indeed, I thought the problems were getting worse.
While he described the resignation of Tim Davie as a tragedy, he insisted the Director General had a blind spot, but stressed that he personally had no political agenda.
Whether people at the BBC think this stuff's been weaponised or not, surely that's a secondary issue. There are very specific things that have been going wrong.
As for his relationship with board member Sir Robbie Gibb, who's been accused of political interference and plotting, there was this.
Yes, I do know Robbie.
And would you call him a friend? Because there's all these rumours swirling around.
Yes, I think that's a fair description, yeah. If you operate in this country, in the sphere of politics, the media and so on, it's not that unusual to come across people you know.
The man himself then appeared straight after. This was the first time we'd seen Sir Robbie Gibb, a political appointee to the BBC board during Boris Johnson's government, who had this to say on how he's been discussed in the press.
There couldn't be a bigger mismatch between the way I'm presented in some quarters in relation to my attitude. I think I'd become weaponised in terms of how I'm perceived. Everyone that know me, I'm hugely impartial.
Summoned to speak alongside was BBC Chair Samir Shah and fellow board member Caroline Thompson. With critics questioning whether the board is still fit for purpose, it was important to present a united front.
Was there anything orchestrated about what's happened to the BBC over the last couple of weeks, the departure of Tim Davie, etc.?
It's up there as one of the most ridiculous charges. People had to find some angle. It's complete nonsense. It's also deeply offensive to fellow board members.
But Samir Shah conceded lessons had been learned, that the board was in the last 3 weeks too slow to respond.
It matters that we are just quicker and get on the front foot.
As for those questioning Samir Shah's leadership, the BBC chair came out fighting.
I think right now my job is to steer the ship out of the shop into an even keel and make sure, and the most important job I have right now is to recruit a Director General.
Questions answered, coup claims denied, and a clear message that the focus should now be on finding a new Director General. But whether this has been enough to satisfy those left with questions about this most recent scandal remains to be seen. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Well, let's focus on the legacy now of one of Jamaica's best-loved artists, Jimmy Cliff, who died today. He rose to fame in Jamaica in the 60s and helped bring reggae to global audience. I'm very pleased to say now we have Shaggy joining us, a member of the younger generation of Jamaican reggae and dancehall artists who Jimmy Cliff inspired. Shaggy, just tell us, how will you remember Jimmy Cliff?
Well, it's a very sad day today. We've lost one of the greatest icons we could ever have. Jimmy, to me, was a guy that, he broke barriers. Songs like The Harder They Come was those type of songs that really, because he was really our first really rock star, if you think about it, because, he was also a movie star in that movie as an independent film, and of course made a cult following afterwards. So he was the guy that pioneered a lot of things for us and broke down a lot of boundaries, and he'd be terribly missed.
Yeah, and the Harder They Come, the film, the soundtrack to that, kind of introduced the world to reggae music, didn't it? Kind of internationalised reggae music. But one of his first tracks was Hurricane Hattie, which was about the cyclone, the hurricane, the year before it was released in 1962. How do you think he thought about the terrible hurricane that you've done so much to raise funds for, to relieve, that's just hit Jamaica last month?
It's really hard to say what he would have thought. I mean, the last time I was with Jimmy was probably about 2 years ago when I did an event honoring Paul Simon's songs, his legacy, and his his whole vibe. And we were on stage on a television event where we sang Mother and Child together. Paul Simon was there that day. And at that time, if you could see that thing, I was walking with him on stage. It was a live television thing, and I had to lead him, so I knew his sight was going. So there was a lot of things that was going on with Jimmy at that time, but his voice was there and his spirit is there. I think he would have been, he would have been weeping for our country at this time. He was always a person that hold our country dear to his heart.
Was he the grandfather of reggae, would you say? Was he bigger than Bob Marley and more important than Bob Marley even, in terms of getting reggae going right from the beginning?
I think that Bob's legacy became a bigger brand, but Jimmy was certainly one of the guys that pioneered it. It'd be fair to say I don't think you could have a Bob without a Jimmy. because you got to remember Jimmy was really before Bob. You know, Chris Blackwell, that was his first superstar, and then of course, you know, Jimmy had left and did his own thing, and Jimmy kind of took up Chris Blackwell kind of took up Bob and kind of made him this massive superstar.
Shaggy.
So Jimmy was definitely a part of that journey.
Shaggy, well, it's fantastic to have you on tonight, remembering one of the true greats of reggae music. So good to have you back on the show. But let's play out listening to Jimmy Cliff, one of his greatest hits. Could talk to you all night and listen to his music all night, but let's now listen to Jimmy Cliff as we play out. That's all from us on The World. We'll be back tomorrow at 9. News at 10 is up next.
Wandering I've been lost as I traveled along the wide cliffs of Dover.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.